Hello and welcome to the Love Vibe podcast, hosted by Angela and Key, two women from the African diaspora creating space to explore and celebrate the sometimes unheard voices, stories and storytellers that speak to triumph and healing in the face of adversity and trauma. We will look at our connections to ourselves, to others, the environment, ancestry and the stars. Yes, astrology. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We welcome you to join us. Now, let's start the show. Hi, and welcome to the Love Vibe podcast. And today we have a really special guest for you, and it's Dr. Simone Aybar. Dr. Simone Aybar is a Doctor of Chiropractic who graduated from Palmer College in 1994. Dr. Aybar is the fourth Black woman to graduate from the Fountainhead of Chiropractic in 125 years. Dr. Aybar came to Australia and started a private practice and family. Over the years, Dr. Aybar has been actively involved with the Chiropractic Association of Victoria, holding various positions from vice president to chairing committees both on state and national levels, as well as being a founding member of the Endometriosis Care Centre of Australia. An active member of the community of women in business, Dr. Aybar was a board member of the International Federation of Women in Commerce and Industry. Currently, Dr. Aybar sits on the advisory board for the Antipodes Theatre Company, which started during the pandemic. Simone, wow. We absolutely welcome you. All I can say is that introduction is just extraordinary. That's the only word that comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Say hey.
Hey.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Wow. I had no idea that was the case, that I was number 4. And there was 10 years between myself and number 3, and 10 years from number 3 and number 2, and only a couple of years from 2 and 1.
Wow.
So, and number 5 graduated with me, Dr. Aybar Ronchetti. Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, incredible.
Amazing. And we are just really happy to have you on the show today. And we're going to get down and, ask you some questions about who you are and your story, because this podcast is all about the story. And I suspect that, as I said, extraordinaire. So I'm expecting, that your story is just going to blow everybody away. And Simone, can I ask you, with all of that extraordinary introduction of all the things that you've done, I'm really curious and fascinated to know, where are your people from?
It's really an interesting, as all of us, it's a quite an interesting mixed bag. So on my father's side, it turns out that, I always thought our family heritage was Turkish. And one of my Syrian patients looked at me and said, "You're not Turkish. You're not Turkish." Wow. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." But he wouldn't tell me. He said, "I'll tell you next time I see you." Then, of course, I never saw him again. So that wasn't good, which is okay. That happens. He had to go back to Syria. So, it was like that. But what I found out was that my family originated in Saudi Arabia. And from Saudi Arabia, they then moved to Lebanon, and from Lebanon to Spain. And from Spain, they were the original 20 families that colonized the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
And my father's father was the first member of the family to marry outside of the Spanish culture. So my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, is from the Bahamas in Alistown.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so my great grandmother Drusilla was an amazing woman, and she was part Cherokee. So it was a really interesting mixture of people, places. And then on my mother's side of the family, her paternal grandmother was from Trinidad.
Okay.
And she married at 21, which was, way old, way too old.
Hmm.
And the story goes, as she told me, that her husband said, we're going to move to America. But, because she was a bit older, she was very religious, she wasn't quite, ready to consummate the wedding. And he threatened her. And so she did it. She said he was an animal. It was awful. And then she ran away. And she ran away to New York anyway without him. And of course, then she lands as a Catholic, and they're like, "Oh, where's the husband? Oh, no, we can't have that." So she joined this Episcopalian church, which she was a member of until she, died she was 106, something like that.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I never knew my maternal grandfather because he died when my mother was 4.
Right.
And so that was a bit sad. But yeah, it was amazing having 2 great grandmothers. Now, my grandfather Domingo, my father's father, I did meet him when I was very, very young, but he didn't speak any English, so he scared me. And I remember looking at him over the couch, and he was like, "Come here, come here." I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no." And then he started cussing me out in Spanish. And my grandmother came in, and she, it was on from then on. But he was an artist, and she was his muse. And they were, I think he was 25 years older or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And he had my father, and then he had my uncle when he was in his 70s. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
So we've gone from the Middle East to the Caribbean to Dominican Republic to America. And obviously within all of those kind of cultures and family systems, the role of women and mothers, it would be, I don't know, very different in all of those spaces. But for you, in terms of like your ancestry, like
very different.
What role do you think, what was the perception of like the role of women and mothers in particular as you were growing up? Because we have the spoken and unspoken thing in our family systems and in our cultures and communities. And for you, what do you think was the messaging that you got about?
Well, I came from, a long line of very strong women. My paternal great grandmother had 5 husbands. They all died, right?
Was it mysterious or natural causes?
Look, I hesitate to speculate. She was a soothsayer. She was, a divine, metaphysical, amazing woman.
Okay.
Her words would have been powerful.
And she spoke very few words.
You don't want to mess with her. So if she says something might happen.
That's it. And I've got all her certificates. I've got all of them from 30 something. I've got all of her certificates of being a spiritual healer and all kinds of stuff. It was amazing.
Wow.
And then on my mom's side of the family, they were very strict is not really the right word. But I remember being really young and realizing that when I realized that my grandmother was my mother's mother and she could tell my mom what to do, I thought, ooh. And then when I met my great grandma, I was like, wait, she can tell grandma what to do? And it was like this reverence for these women because it was like, wow, there's a chain of command here. And so my mother really didn't have to take an active role in the direction of me because every summer we would be with one set of great grandparents or the other, like, so we got shipped off and we learned how to behave from them.
Right.
So there was never any like foolishness because, they just look at you and you just didn't, no, it just didn't happen.
That's that old school childhood. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, you scared of grandma and you really scared of great grandma.
Yeah,
you're
definitely.
like, nope. And I was telling my daughter that I got slapped twice in my life. Once when I was 10, because I didn't know that people couldn't read. And I made some comment with my auntie. I said, Grandma, can't you read that? Whack. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, you don't cry. You just apologize real quick because you done messed up.
Yeah.
And then I got smacked by my great-grandmother once when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
That's it. Like, I didn't have a lot of that because it just didn't happen. And when I was 18, I was asking my grandmother about this dish. And it was a serving dish for, sweets and whatever, cookies and things like that. I was like, oh, well, in Texas, we just give you a beer. Smack. Oh, I'm sorry, Grandma. And she had, Mrs. Wilson with her, who was like 102. And I didn't realize that the drinking age in New York City was 21. So, of course, I'm talking about drinking underage, hence the smack.
Yeah.
You didn't know that till later because you just goes, oh, I'm so sorry, Grandma. And that was it. You shut right up.
Yeah.
There was no commentary,
So the women were strong. The women were strong. They knew what their role was, and their role was to mold, and they were really in that wisdom seat of we are passing this stuff to you.
Yes.
And everyone knew that was the thing.
Yes.
And so how did that translate into them as mothers? There's strength, there's wisdom given, there's guidance. Was there anything else? There
was presence. They were with us. We were with them the entire time we were there. So you had someone who was with you from the moment you woke up to the moment you went to sleep every day for 3 months. And you learned by example. You saw how they were with others. You saw how, seeing my grandmother with her auntie was really funny because I remember, Aunt Lola May used to tell Grandma what to do. And I said, Grandma, how come Aunt Lola May always tells you what to do? And she started giggling. She said, and then what? I said, well, but she goes, and then what? And I said, nothing. She goes, that's right. And then she laughed. She goes, honey, she can say anything she wants. And I'm going to go, and then I'm going to go right about my business. And I went, wow. Wow. And I thought, okay, I got it now. I got it.
Yeah.
You hear, you listen, you know, and then you do whatever it is you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you would know if you stepped over that boundary line. You would know because there would be yeah, you'd know.
Yeah.
And so with all of that kind of rich passing down of wisdom.
Yeah. So it was beautiful. It was a beautiful observation.
Yeah. And so with all of that kind of rich blueprint that you were given, for you, what would be your own concept of mothering? And how do you think that that's changed for you over time?
Well, my concept of mothering is basically being a custodian of other human beings. Yeah. So for me, I knew very quickly that my children had their own personality very young. And, particularly my daughter, she was so feisty. Oh my God, she was so feisty. And, I remember one time, I gave her a smack on the bottom and she put her hand on her hip and she leant in and she goes, that didn't even hurt, Mommy. And I thought to myself, okay, I either have to beat her to death or come up with a new plan. And I said, well, the smack is not about hurting you. It's about stopping you from doing something that's dangerous or,
Yeah.
And she kind of looked at me she just, like, I knew that this child, I said, my job is not to break you. My job is to harness that energy for good. I said, because you come from a long line of mean women.
Oh, wow.
So we just gotta, we just have to, I want you to be you.
Yeah.
I don't want to change you. I just want to help you see the world in a way that allows you to function within it and, move along out into the wild.
Yeah.
That was always my philosophy. And my mom was she was fantastic in that she never tried to make us one way or another. She didn't, we were, to some degree, we were a bit self-seated, but then we weren't. Like, we knew what we needed to do based on what we'd experienced with our grandmothers and our great grandmothers. So, we knew how to behave.
Yeah.
She didn't have to chastise us. She didn't have to do all that. So for me, it really didn't get incredibly challenging until later, those teenage years. That got really challenging. And, that created a whole nother world. And I guess with motherhood, you don't know what to expect. You have no idea. Nothing prepares you for motherhood. Nothing. It doesn't matter how, zen you are, doesn't matter what is going on. You ultimately have no control. You have boundaries, but you have no control.
Yeah.
You ultimately have to be present. And sometimes your only role is just to bear witness to whatever's going on for them, because that's all you can do. You can't help them make choices. You can't help them navigate the world. And, for a good chunk of time, my daughter had a really tough time, and I had no idea what to do. I was absolutely devastated, and I just had to hold the space. And then, just share with her that, the words that you say are your reality.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you start to change what you say internally, you will change. And I remember one day she woke up and she said, "Oh, it's okay. Today, I feel okay today." I was like, wonderful. I said, now, that moment, however long it lasts, focus on that. Because life is never fun and happy and all that shit. It just is not. It is very much about being observant and being patient with yourself and being kind to yourself and knowing that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Even when it's like, whew, hardcore.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody telling me that when I had my kids, because they're like 15 months apart. And, there were days where you're just like, one nappy, next nappy, one nappy, next nappy. And you're like feeding them. And after a while, I was like, here's the fork, you bloody feed yourself. And, they were sitting there with their little cutlery. And I tell you what, they got that food in their mouth, because they're not about wasting that food. They're not going to eating kids. None of this, let's smear it all over our body. It was in the mouth, and they were looking for more, which was great, But yeah, it was very much hope, pray that everything rubbed off the right way, and they'll work it out. And you just have to say, I know you'll work it out, honey. I know you'll work it out. And you're simply going, really? I remember thinking to myself, I took my kids back to America to see and I said, where do you want to go? They said, I want to see where you grew up and what you did when you were a kid. So I took them to all my forts, all the places, to the creek and all the places we used to play. And they're like, hey, how come you don't let us go, rogue by ourselves and this, that, and the other? I'm like, different times. And I said, and you've got to have a crew. You can't be out with just the two of you. You got to have there's got to be at least 4.
Yeah.
One to stay with the one that's down and one to go with the other one that's going to get help. That's it. If you can have 4 kids, if there's 4 of you, you can go anywhere you want. You can do anything you want. They're like, really? And nobody else would let their kids, you're not going down there. That was it for them, you know. But yeah, I think that the whole idea of motherhood is that, yeah, we have the privilege of bearing witness to another person's development. And our presence gives them some level of security that allows them to work it out.
Yeah.
And some days it's good, and some days it's not so good. And I remember going and having time out one day. I just went and sat on the step out the kitchen, and the kids came. What you doing? I said, oh, mommy's in timeout. Oh, what'd you do? You know, mommy didn't do anything yet, but wow, yeah, mommy just needs to sit here and just be in timeout. And they're like, okay, well, when you're done with timeout, come back in here. I'm like, yeah. So I was like, oh my God. You know, I just sat there thinking, is this my life? Is this what it is? Is this what it's all about? And I sat there for, it must have been a good 45 minutes, just thinking, just breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Because no one prepares you for selflessness.
No, they
and
do
that's the ultimate role, is selflessness. And
yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about sort of for mothers anyway. And I think actually, no, I'll take that back. I think it's for everybody, that there is something to be said about accepting and embracing the season that you're in life, right?
Whatever it is,
right? And for a lot of mothers, there's a lot of acceptance and embracing that needs to happen when it comes to becoming a mother. And that's something that I've definitely, you know, had to focus on, or actually something that just recently came up for me. It's like, am I accepting this role? Am I embracing this role? Because for some reason there seems to be a lot of friction, and it's a little bit difficult to navigate. And that might be because I'm not fully accepting and fully embracing that. So that's something that, you know, obviously I have to unpack for myself. But, you know, I was talking to a girlfriend about it the other day, because, you know, we're both moms and young families. And it's like, yeah, maybe that's a discussion that needs to be had, like learning how to accept and embrace, you know, what stage or what season in life you're in at the moment. So
I think that is well and truly a big part of it. But I think the other part is, you know, we accept a lot of responsibility for stuff that we don't really have to be responsible for.
And
I think we take on so much that is so unnecessary.
Like, could you give me an example, Simone?
I know I'm going to get in trouble, but you know what? You don't have to clean the house every freaking day. You know what I mean? I mean, I was at this point where, you know, when they were little, they'd go down for nap time and I'm mopping the kitchen, I'm doing the toys, you know, the house is like, ta-da! And then they wake up and they throw everything in the air again. And I'm like, then feed them, bath time, back in bed, clean up, mopping the kitchen. It was like, what is that? You know, I mean, you can do it at the end of the day. You don't have to do it twice a day. You know, you don't have to put all the toys away. You can take a broom and push all that shit into one corner. There are your toys. They're waiting for you. You know, like it's like you. I think a lot of the difficulty is what we think we're supposed to be. You know, and it really, you just have to be who you are. And if you aren't that person that's ironing their underwear, right? And ironing everything in the house, and don't be that person.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of that stress off of you. And it's, quite frankly, nobody cares. Kids don't care if the house is clean. They just want to play with you. Mommy, let's do this. Mommy, let's do that. Let me paint your face, you know, okay. You know, it's like, it's that time together that makes all the difference, not whether or not you had a clean house. You know, God forbid should somebody stop by. You know, I have a girlfriend who, you know, like, it was just like an explosion. And I would go to visit, I'd bring my kids and I'd look and I'd go, what can I do? Well, that's a stupid question. You know what you can do? There's dishes in the sink. Go do the dishes. You know, there's clothes in a pile. Start folding the clothes. How do you want this folded? Oh, no, you don't have to do that. I was like, shut up, honey. You clearly aren't doing it. So let's do it together. And, oh, okay. Then the kids are tearing up the house and we're folding clothes, you know? It's like we don't have that village.
Yeah.
We don't have that village. So we heap everything up on ourselves. I mean, I think the Chinese have it great. You know, it's like, oh, mama comes, she stays for 3 months. You don't go out of the house. You stay in the bed, you know, like, yeah, bring that food, bring that food. You get to relax, you know, you don't get the wind, nothing happens to you, the baby's safe, you know. Yeah. But we don't really have that here, as especially as expats.
Yeah, definitely. Because I was going to ask you, like, did your kids
don't take on a role that you haven't designed for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, there seems like there's a lot of unpreparedness. Like you said, there's no rule book. There's a lot, and it is a massive rites of passage. And so there's no rule book. And, you know, if you're in another country where your family is not, then, you know, it's much easier to kind of be challenged by all the values that you've had, you know, the house being clean all the time. Because I know growing up in my household, the clean house was like, it was really important. And so to be able to put those things down is a real challenge when you're totally unprepared for the journey that you're about to go on. You know, there's all these other things that you probably need physically, hormonally, you know, the assistance, the village assistance that you need that you might not have. That's just such a difficult challenge. That would be so challenging.
And you know,
and everything is meant to be on you as a woman.
But a thank you goes a long way. You know, if somebody said, oh, honey, thank you so much for, you know, doing such a great job. I know it's like herding cats and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I know it's hard work. You know, how can I support you? Never said. You know, you might get lucky on the weekend where you get to have a sleep in, which is brilliant. Really brilliant. And, you know, I'll just put it out there. I am divorced. And I remember when everything was going down, we were supposed to be going to visit some friends with the kids. And he said, oh, you know, I don't, you know, I think that, you know, I shouldn't go, you know, we shouldn't go together. I'll just gloss over that. Anyway, in the end, he said, look, I think I'll take the kids. I said, oh, that'd be great. I said, that'll be my first weekend off in 5 years. And he just looked at me. I said, yeah, see ya.
Wow.
Like 5 years.
5
years. I had not had a weekend off. A weekend off. You know, I've had hours off or, you know, whatever, but that was the first time. So, you know, I'm not encouraging divorce, but I tell you what, that was the best thing that ever happened. I said it was a shame about the kids, but it was the best thing that ever happened. And I remember thinking to myself, am I supposed to be excited? I know that's a shame. That's a damn shame. And I'm not saying I didn't love my husband, but you know, let's face it. You go into life with this idea of what it's going to be. And then you get married and it's going to be like this and it's going to be like that. And, you know, and it's not. He's not anything that you ever thought it was going to be. Ever. On any level. Ever. And you think to yourself, wait. But then you get to the realization that what you thought was a fantasy. That was a complete fantasy based on absolutely nothing. No life experience, right? And so I got to the point where I realized this isn't bad. It's just different to what I thought it was going to be. Mm. And it was a fantasy. So my reality, it's not good or bad. It just is. And that was like a real aha moment. And when I got to that place, I was actually at peace. And this was before the divorce. So, you know, it was huge. It was huge.
Okay, so that's all like really amazing. And I think I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about sort of your superpowers and your gifts, because we know you've been a doctor of chiropractic for the past, 25 plus years. And so at what point did you first realize your gift for working with the body and also like working with the body's immunity?
Well, I think it was something that, when you train, I don't think they really prepare you for the journey in the sense that, yes, you understand how to do your assessments, and yes, you learn how to do, what you need to do and the basic fundamentals. But I was so in awe of the responses that they never told us about. So basically the premise of chiropractic is, that our body is a self-healing organism, and what impacts us is not just our physical life, but our emotional and our social well-being is all part of being healthy. And so what I wasn't really prepared for was how much of our health is influenced by our emotional well-being, by our, our social interactions. All of that stuff impacts your health and your immunity. And so when you go and you hear what people have to say and you listen to their why they're there to see you in the first place, you actually get to take all that into consideration. And I think that I wasn't really aware of that until probably 5 or 6 years in practice. I mean, I knew it was there, but to actually see it and to recognize it. And so when someone came in and they were quite upset about an accident or injury they'd had, it wasn't so much about the injury, but more about the impact it had on them emotionally, and helping them along that journey to deal with that emotional aspect as well. Because while we deal with the physical aspect, it also impacts all of the others. And I think, we are really very basic and very simple in terms of how we function. And when we don't live according to how we feel we should be living, that's when we start to have problems. And, all of that influences every aspect of our health, including our immune system. When you're in that stressful environment and you're working in a place where you don't feel appreciated, and you try to communicate that, but it doesn't work, it's not uncommon for people to start to experience headaches and migraines and neck pain, and start having pain in their body, because if they can't get it out, it goes in. And then they come to your office and you go, okay. I have 2 classic examples. One was a woman, I obviously won't say her name, a woman that came to see me, and she was having, I know it sounds crazy, but she was having vaginal pain, like spasms.
Okay.
Now, you'd say, well, why would somebody like that go to a chiropractor? Well, the nerve supply to the pelvic floor comes from the sacrum, comes from your lower back. And so my thought was, okay, there must be something going on in her pelvis, and it's affecting, where the muscles attach, and maybe this is the way forward. So, she had a couple of sessions. She was seeing other people as well. And she was getting a little bit better, but not really. And one day I just sat down and I looked at her and I said, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And she looked at me and she took a big breath and she said, I haven't had sex for 25 years. I said, well, I'll do it, and she's married, I'm like, right, leave it with me. And it was funny because my former husband is a chiropractor, and he was looking after the husband. So I snuck over in there and I said, "Oh, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah." And I knew they were going on a holiday. I said, "Oh, it'll be so nice. Europe is so romantic." And he stiffened up. He's like, "I'm not touching her." And I said, "What's wrong with you?" "Oh, I had prostate. I said, "Oh, so you haven't had a test drive. So you think that just because you had prostate issues that you're never going to be able to drive again?" I said, "Right. You need to go check that out. You need to make sure that it actually works. Like, just because you've had prostate issues doesn't mean that you're incapacitated." And I said, and by the way, intimacy isn't just that. Right. You can hold her hand, put your arm around her. Anyway, off they went on their trip. She came back, she was fine. So, you think to yourself, all right, what is going on? I had a woman come in with, incredible jaw pain and headaches. And I'm thinking, okay, and, I do a bit of cranial work and, I can work with the jaw and the upper neck. They are all, influencing each other. So I'm checking her out and doing the thing. She's a little bit better, but not great. A little bit better, not great. Same thing. I sat down, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And she said, "Oh, I've got this daughter, blah, blah, blah." And she goes on, right? I said, "Oh, look, your jaw is moving." She went, I said, "Right." I said, "Go bend her over your knee, give her a smack on the bottom, sort that shit, and I'll see you later." Like, come on now. And she's like, "But what about my jaw?" I said, "You just sort your stuff out. And if you have, if you want me to check you again, I'm happy to do that, but you need to go sort that out." So she went. And then I didn't see her for like a year. And then she comes back and she's like, "I know there's an emotional component, but my jaw is really locked and I think my neck is out." And I laughed. I said, "No problem." And, and I looked after her. So you don't realize how these things impact us.
Yeah.
And, if you're not sleeping, and if you're not drinking water, and if you're not moving your body, how are you going to cleanse yourself? How are you going to detox? How are you going to have a healthy immune system? If you're not able to think about what you put in your body, I mean, your body is your temple.
Yeah.
I always say 80-20 rule, 80% good, 20%, maybe not so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can stick to that, by and large, you're going to have everything you need. You need to eat a variety of foods because they give you all the building blocks. If you don't have the building blocks, you can't heal and repair. You can't heal and repair. Then your body takes a pattern because it's not able to heal and repair. Your tendons, your ligaments, your joints, they all become affected. It's like seeing people who smoke. They don't realize, but they're leaching that vitamin C out of their body. And that's why, they tend to get wrinkly. And, the whole problem with the lungs is that you need that vitamin C for your connective tissue. And all of a sudden, your lungs lose their elasticity because not only is it not moving, because you get puffed out, so you're not exercising, and you're damaging your air, your actual lung tissue, so it doesn't have the vitamin C to repair and heal. And so then we end up with, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. And then we can't breathe, and eventually that's the ugly truth of it.
Yeah.
And if you stop smoking and you start moving, and yes, you hack up a lung, but that's your body going, "Oh, we can move this stuff now because we're not paralyzed from all the tar and nicotine."
Yeah.
So most people stop smoking, they hack up a lung, they get sick, they can't do anything. No, this is detoxing. This is good. And it may take you 5 or 6 years before you feel normal again. But, you're going to be 5 or 6 years anyway. So you might as well be on the upswing,
Yeah, right.
And as a chiropractor, what we do, your nervous system controls and coordinates all aspects of your body and your well-being. And so by looking after your body in that way, your nervous system is basically unimpeded. You have less interference. You have, you're not thinking about, "Oh, I can't turn my neck." You're not thinking about that because you can. And if you can turn your neck, you can see what's going on behind you. You're not going to get in the car accident, you know? Yeah. Or you may be able to notice that your sense of smell or your sense of taste is better. Oh my goodness, you're not going to drink that nasty whatever it is that you were going to drink because you couldn't really smell it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's all fascinating. Like I find it, very interesting how we have like all of those things are connected. And I think it's taken a while for people to really, and maybe even for science as well, to catch up with that, because, we didn't always have this, information about how all these systems were linked and kind of interplayed or interconnected to each other. But I also wanted to ask you, and because I did have a quick look at your natal chart. We tend to do that on the show for all of our guests. And what I found is that and I'm sure you know this, that your ascendant or your rising sign is a Virgo. Now, from my perspective and my kind of school of astrology that I come from, Virgos are considered the healers in the zodiac sign. Yeah. So it's very fascinating that your rising sign and now you're also a chiropractic. And so that kind of all plays together. And then another aspect of it is you have a lot of earth energy in your chart. And earth is very grounding. It's very stable. And I think, it helps sort of in your specific role to help people feel very comfortable around you, and allows you to sort of dig into their lives a little bit to find out where those links are and how those things are interplaying against each other. And so from my perspective, I guess what I wanted to ask was sort of what helped you, what drew you to chiropractic, the chiropractic industry, right? Like what was it that kind of pulled you there? And did you know that was where your gift sort of superpower was?
Well, what drew me to chiropractic? It's been, anyway. Okay, I'm just going to tell you the story. So basically, I was working. I injured myself at work. The manager said, "Oh, I know a great chiropractor," and I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Oh, no, they look at your spine and blah blah blah." And this guy like peeked over his shoulder and said, "They crack your bones." And I'm like, what? She's like, no, he's really good. I'll take you. Anyway, so I went to see this guy. And I just, I thought it was the cutest thing ever. So, kind of long story short, he was my chiropractor for about 1.5 years. And then I was no longer seeing him. And because it happened at work, it was a work cover thing. And he gave me the list of, lawyers that I could speak to. And I just happened to pick one that was his friend. And so I said, "Oh, I think he's really cute. I really like him." And he's like, "Oh, no. I said, "Is he single? Tell him I want a date." He was like, "What? Don't be ridiculous." Anyway, so I ended up dating him for about 1.5 years. And I was always, I was in the sciences anyway. I was a biochem major at University of Texas. And I realized really quickly, I'm not built for fluorescent lights. Like, what am I going to be doing in there? Like, I don't want to do that. But I didn't know where to really go. And so I kept sort of moving around and changing my, anyway. And he said, "Have you ever thought about becoming a chiropractor?" And I said, "No." He said, "Come and check it out." So I was listening to the stories. I was checking out what was going on. And I thought to myself, "Wow, this is really cool." But then I had to look at what the prerequisites were. And I thought, if I can do organic chemistry and physics, I can do anything. And, I had fantastic instructors. I did really well and I got in. And so I didn't really realize the full extent of what it was all about until I'd been in practice for a few years. And it was such an unexpected thing, because I was about 25 when I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I remember telling my mom, and she was so excited. And I said, "Do you know what a chiropractor is?" She goes, "Honey, I don't give a damn. Pick something." I'm like, because I've been in school forever. And she's like, "Just do something. Pick something."
Yeah.
I'm self-funded. I'm doing what? And she just laughed. She said, "You'll figure it out."
Wow.
Yeah. And so I didn't realize the impact until I got into it.
Okay.
And it was the best decision I've ever made.
Wow. Oh, I'm sure all of your clients would definitely agree with that.
I love them. I love them.
So in talking about how all of these things sort of interplay and are interconnected, I want to kind of put that perspective on sort of everything. So how, like, motherhood and expressing sort of your gifts and superpowers and growing a business at the same time, like, how were you able to balance sort of all of these things, balancing motherhood, balancing your practice and your career, balancing growing your business because you have your own practice at the moment, or you've had your own practice for a while now, actually. So yeah, how have you managed to sort of balance all of these things?
Well, honestly, I didn't know how I did it. I think it was just, having to do one day at a time. And I think I realized early on that in order to be able to function and manage my kids and then manage after the divorce and all that sort of stuff, I really chose the number of days that I could function. So I was working 2 days a week, and I was available to the kids, 5 days a week. And then once a month, I was going to my practice in New South Wales. So I was able to coordinate all of that. And it took a while, and I didn't really notice how it all kind of grew. It just sort of, you're so busy putting out fires and, spinning plates and freaking doing the thing that, it wasn't until they were sort of older and because they were sort of 7 and 5 when their dad left. And, having that shared care really allowed me time to be a bit more strategic and sort of look at where I was at, what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. So it was in that space that I was able to kind of get a bit of a vision. But by and large, I was very fortunate because the places that I worked, I had room for them. So if the kids were sick, I could drag them with me, and put them in another room. So I think choosing the chiropractic profession was really mother friendly. Okay. So you could take your kids to work with you. You could, navigate around that if you had to. I mean, fortunately, they weren't, babies. And really, that's how it all happened. It wasn't really a thought out process per se.
Okay. Interesting.
So Simone, you talked a lot about, the importance of the village, in kind of, assisting in terms of motherhood. You've talked about, when you had shared care with your kids, that was something that really assisted you, and that, your working life, you were able to, it made room for your kids. You didn't have to stop what you were doing to be able to, still parent and still, still do all of those really vital things. And they're all external things. And I suppose my curiosity at the moment is what are the kind of internal bits of you that kind of, and when did you decide that, self-care was really important? Because we talked about the external and like the internal, like at what point did you decide that the self-care element of, and of what, of what you've kind of been doing, and when did that become important?
Well, the self-care really, quite frankly, didn't come in until the kids were pretty much grown and moved on.
Wow. God damn.
Wow. So when you said,
well, I think self-care is always important. Yeah. And I don't think I realized, part of the difficulty with, being a single parent and doing all that is actually having the self-care. And, while we had shared care for a period of time, he then left the country and I had them back full time. So it was those teenage years, 12 to, onwards, where I was a sole parent again.
Right.
And self-care was so important, and I didn't realize how important it was, but I just kept going. I didn't really, nobody had time for that.
So then again, my question to you is, what's the inner workings? What's the thing that's happening on the inside of you that enables you to kind of do all of that stuff? Because in retrospect, you're saying self-care at times it wasn't something that I thought about, and at times there wasn't space for it because you were the sole person, you were the one,
Yeah.
you were the one. So what's on the inside? What's the inner workings that enables you to do you and be you and do it how you've done it?
Well, I think for me, going into practice and having the relationships with my patients that I had, in a way, it kind of gave me the tools that I needed, because I could sort of vicariously live through their situation without them being aware, but I was getting the pearls of wisdom from them as well. And some of my patients, particularly in Wagga, I'd seen for 25 years, and we kind of grew up together. Like, I didn't have kids at the time, and then I had kids, and I brought my kids once, and just their pearls of wisdom sort of helped buoy me. And then one in particular, my daughter decided she was going to have piercings, and one of my patients said, "Honey, let her have it. Let her do it now, let her have everything she wants." I'm like, "Ah!" She said, "It's okay. So if you do it now, wait and see. By the time she hits 18, she'll be done." And she was so right. I said, "Yeah, honey, do." She was like, "What, really?" And I'm like, "To your face. You're the one who's got to deal with it, And it was really hard. And I was like, woo, struggling. And a couple of them were cute, and a couple of them were like, "No, please, no, just no." And through the course of time, eventually, she's down to nothing. She's got little diamantes on the sides, that I'm aware of. I don't know. Anyway, she's 21 now. Off you go. But
it's all in your own hands.
That's it. So I really had a lot of encouragement from seeing how other people handle things. And I think, and really going to Wagga once a month was respite, because I got to stay in a hotel. I was on my own. I drove to Wagga. I'd get to my hotel room. I could lay out on the bed. I could just be in my own silence. And that was rejuvenating. Even though I worked my guts out, it was rejuvenating. And then I'd get back and I'm like, back into it,
Yeah.
So
and I did. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I noticed that in your story, you've talked a lot about the impact of observing. So with your mum, your grandma, your great grandma, observing, in your work to be able to cope, it's observing. It's being able to listen to other people's pearls of wisdom and to do accordingly. So you're very much an observer, aren't you? And that's the way that life gives you things. That's fascinating. So what does Glow Resting Pay look like now?
Well, now it's, I don't have to deal with the day-to-day of motherhood, because, my daughter lives independently. She's coming back, which is okay, temporarily. I said, "This is a transit lounge, honey. This is not the destination." You can always come back to the transit lounge, but you got to get out. So everybody's happy with that. And at the moment, my son is in the transit lounge, And in the transit lounge, you got to fend for yourself. You're cooking, you're cleaning. I'm not doing all that,
Yeah.
So the rules have changed, So what it looks like now for me is, I'm writing, I'm sketching, I'm doing all the things that I've always enjoyed doing, but really didn't find a lot of time for. And I've got this brilliant friend, Maxim, who's an artist, and she and the scientist, and she used to sort of send me a text message at the crack of dawn sometimes, and she'd send me a poem. And then I'd reply to her poem with another poem. And we just, back and forth. And so she's really encouraged me to, let that creative side of me flow. And, I've been writing, I'm actually going to write a book about my experiences with my daughter, which were harrowing, which will, be another conversation.
Yeah.
And I've been writing a book about self-care.
Wow.
So, I'm in the final stages of that book. And I mean, it's not like an encyclopedia or anything. It's really just pearls along the way, what things can look like and why it's important. And I think, I did take time to go out into the country. I took time to walk. I took time to sit and watch the leaves. I have this brilliant gum tree outside of my window. And at the crack of dawn, the sky ends up being like robin's egg blue. And this tree looks like it's, was it navy green, army green, like army fatigue color green. And I'm always fascinated that as the sun comes up, the leaves become more defined, then you start to see the colors on the bark. And so sometimes just sitting there looking out the window is all it took, I started meditating, a couple of years ago when life started changing for the world. I turned my television off and I said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, participate in this collective trauma. And, I started meditating in the morning. I started meditating in the afternoon before bed. If I started feeling myself getting worked up, there's a meditation for that. So I started all guided meditation because, I can't just, I can, but at that point it was all guided.
Yeah.
And that really made a huge difference to, the last few years. And, it's something I've been able to share with my patients as well. Yeah. It's like, so much of what we are fearful of doesn't exist. We're afraid that this could happen or that could happen. Well, that's not reality.
Yeah.
And if you stay in your reality, then that doesn't impact you. And then all of a sudden, you have that peace. So self-care for me now is, catching up in whatever way it's safe for everyone, going for walks, hanging out by the river, like whatever. And it's good. It's good now. And discovering Netflix. I haven't done much of that, just little bits at a time. Little bits at a time. And really, I'm quite happy just to sit.
Now that you have time.
Yeah.
And read and write and draw and paint. And I got some clay the other day and started making a little bit of, started working with little air drying clay. And it's fun.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. Amazing.
Well, we look forward to your books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Self-care and your journey and your experiences with your daughter. And we look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
All right, everybody's frozen on me. You're all going slow.
That's okay. So just to kind of bring everything into culmination, and just, thinking about sort of all the things we discussed today with the, coming from the strong line of women, being the observer in life and sort of moving into chiropractic and, the journey through motherhood and sort of how you navigated that. Based on all of sort of what we talked about, how does it feel to be you? How does it feel to be, Simone Aybar?
I think, the the stuff about my journey with my daughter is really heavy going stuff. But one of the things that I took away with that from that experience is that it's so common, and so many people are struggling with mental health issues and don't really have, a voice, or because some things you just don't want to talk about. Some things are just too heavy. And so, during that time, I did very much drop off the face of the earth. Aside from work, which was my respite, when I came home, we were in a little bunker. And we were in this little bunker for like 5 years. And I didn't even realize how long we were there until we were out. And, my friends were like, why did you tell us? I said, well, I didn't know what to do with that. Well, what are you going to do with it? Here's my load of crap. Here, let me just dump it on your lap so we can all feel like shit. No, I don't think so. I love you too much for that, I love you way too much for that. So with all of that experience, I actually sat down with both my children and I said, I think I want to write about this. How do you feel? And my daughter said, if it helps anybody else, let's do it. I said, well, they're going to know your stuff. They're going to know your story. She said, I'm okay with that.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
She said, I am okay with that.
Wow.
Yeah. Same with her brother. He said, oh, really? Okay.
A little bit hesitant.
I said, look, do you think it's worthwhile? Do you think that somebody will actually be able to go, oh, thank God it's not just me?
Absolutely.
And he said, do whatever you want and we'll support it.
Oh, that's great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So I've got all the chapters written out, the headers, and I just needed to give myself a little bit more distance between that time and now.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's coming and it's getting closer because I'm less attached to that experience.
Yeah.
So it'll be good. It'll be good.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit cryptic, but
no, totally.
I'm totally I'm looking forward to like hearing your insights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All that earth energy, you're definitely going to keep it real. So I can't wait.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't wait. Cool. Well, I don't know if you heard the last question I asked, but
sorry.
No, it's fine. I think we had some tech issues, but in terms of like, excuse me, everything that we talked about today. So how you've come from a strong line of a line of like very strong women, how you've been the observer in life. You're, moving into the chiropractic business and sort of being the really embodying that healer aspect of your natal chart, your journey through motherhood, all of these things combined and keeping them in perspective. How does it feel to be you? How does it feel to be, Dr. Simone Aybar?
I don't know. How does it feel? I just feel really grateful that I've had the journey that I've had thus far, and that I've been able to share in the journey of others, and made it, hopefully a positive impact. And it's not about whether or not they stayed with me or whatever, but that they got something out of that could help them in their life and the lives of their friends and family. And I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel like I'm on my purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much more in me. And it's kind of like now I really have a chance to, spread my wings and explore even more, because this age and stage in life, where I'm at with my practice, the role of mentoring and trying new things. We live lifetimes.
Mm.
And this is the thing that I didn't know about. I didn't realize that these are all so many very distinct lifetimes from the time we become aware that we are who we are to where we are now. There are lifetimes, and and you change. And I wouldn't want life to be really any other way.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And I just have so much more to learn and to share and to experience. I'm just like, let's do it. Let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, well, I had to look at you, like in looking at your natal chart, your North Node or your True Node is in Gemini, and typically in also the 10th house. So the 10th house is about sort of our career and our legacy. And Gemini is, you know, the sign of like communication, but it's also friendships. It's also like your like, you know, moving out into the world with people and things like that. And so with your True Node there, it kind of also indicates that you might have like two careers sort of thing, two legacies that you're dealing with. So, you know, we know you have the chiropractic thing, but in talking, hearing you talk about your books and sort of what your plans are for that, I feel like that's probably going to be the next sort of that, you know, that second career is going to kind of start to branch off for you there. And so with sort of, I guess, that in mind, what do you think, or what does your legacy look like? What do you want your legacy to look like?
I think I want my legacy to look like, gosh, that's such a big question.
I know. We ask hard-hitting questions sometimes.
I want my legacy to look like the people that I've come into contact with, the people who I've journeyed with. I want them to be more open, to be more present, to be more aware of themselves and how they impact others. I want them to know that they actually are their co-creator in their journey. And that nothing just happens for no reason. And that, you know, they see the transitions that I've gone through in my life, and they realize that they can do that too.
Yeah.
You know, that words are powerful.
Yeah.
They're powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
And they can, you know, they don't have to stay in a heavy place with pain and suffering. They don't have to be there. They have another choice.
Wow.
And they have control over that.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Because also in your natal chart, you've got Chiron in your 7th, and the 7th house is about sort of our relationships outside of ourselves, like our partnerships, our intimate relationships, all of these relationships. And so with Chiron there, it's a situation where you tend to attract people that have something fundamentally flawed with them, like they're still, you know, dealing with trauma, or they're still dealing with unhealed things. And I think maybe you would have seen in life that you would have attracted quite a few people, you know, in that sort of headspace sort of thing. But we also know with Chiron that Chiron's transit is 50 years. And so at the age of 50, we all have what's called our Chiron return. And that's where we learn the lesson. And we become sort of like the lesson that Chiron is trying to teach us. We learn that lesson and we become the teacher. We become the person that helps other people kind of overcome those things. And I think just hearing you talk about what you want your legacy to look like really sort of embodies that you've already transcended and learned your Chironic lesson. So that is fascinating. That is super amazing.
Wow.
Well done.
And you know, when I remember being with a girlfriend when we were in our 20s, like mid-20s, 24, 23, 24. I remember distinctly us hanging out one night, and we were just talking, and And I said, I don't know what it is, but I can't wait to turn 50. Wow. Something is happening in my 50th years. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I got no idea, but I know that is a really important time.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing that I am waiting for. And I can tell you who I was with. I can tell you exactly where I was.
Wow.
And I remember saying that. And I never could understand why 50 was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we all kind of go through it. Angela's coming up on hers in a couple of years. I still got a ways to go, but I'm in my Chiron square at the moment. So there's a lot of friction happening for me. But yeah, so it's beautiful to hear that you've sort of overcome that, and you're more in the embodiment phase of that now as the healer, which also ties back to your Virgo ascendant. Like it all just kind of works together. So it's really quite fascinating. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Oh, there you go. And the other thing I was going to say is, when I was looking at names for children back in the day, I remember looking up my name, and my name is a Hebrew name, and it's one who hears.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, again, like our names also play a part, right? Like it's like our natal chart is like kind of a reading of the stars, but our name is also attached to our souls, and they all sort of, interplay and work together for a lot of things. So it's, it's no mistake. It all happened for a reason. And hearing that, one who hears, and knowing that you grew up as the observer, it all plays together. It's beautiful. Cool. Do you have anything? So before we go, we often ask guests like if they have anything that they would like to say, any parting words, any words of wisdom, any sort of advice, any pearls that you'd like to leave with the audience before we sign off.
Well, I guess the overarching thing in my life has been, your body is your vessel. It's not the be all end all, but it's the thing that carries your soul, and we've got to look after it. And it's a self-healing organism, and we have to put the right amount of love and care into ourselves as we do everything else around us. And I think it's a wonderful journey. I think it's a wonderful journey this life.
Oh, that's brilliant. And that actually leads into what we're going to talk about on our Patreon. So I think we're going to head over to Patreon now and have a chat with Simone around sort of the body and how the body heals itself and our immunity and how all those things sort of play together. So if you're not a member, go ahead and subscribe to our Patreon account. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next show. Bye.